So there was a question in our chat, which I want to throw to you now. I think that's something that comes up a lot is, a lot of proponents of anti-racism will point out that, historically and perhaps even now, white workers have been too attached to their whiteness to sort of support the expansion of universal public goods. And Walter, you had actually, alluded to this earlier as well. Where does that line of reasoning, or like where does that fall short? And what is your response to that?
Well, it's kind of an empirical question.
Yeah.
Whether some white workers have been more, I can completely imagine that in some contexts, white workers have had like plausible reasons and have been really encouraged, as Adolph was saying before, to be more committed to their whiteness than to the interests of workers. And yeah, if you're trying to tell the truth about history and that's what happened, then you should say that. If you're trying to then draw some kind of moral about the present from that, the moral about the present from that isn't go around saying, stop being so racist. The moral about the present is to say, look, however you feel about black people, you're never going to get this thing unless you organize a bunch of black people.
Right.
So much of current anti-racism is then driven also by this just desire for kind of moral superiority.
Right.
Again, we all know there are lots and lots of people like who want to feel morally superior. We all sort of want to feel morally superior. And, God gives us people like, again, I blame you, Kendi and D'Angelo, so we can feel morally superior. It's not, again, it's a low fucking bar.
Right.
But nonetheless, we can say, I may be kind of a slime ball, but at least I'm not Robin DiAngelo. So fine, that's good. And that serves a purpose. But I think the question of, there's nothing that a certain kind of person on the left, Rediger has made an entire career out of this, about people's attachment, to their whiteness. Right. So again, the point isn't just to deny it. The point Adolph made before is exactly right. Not to be transcontextual about it, to think about the moments in which it made sense to people to become more attached to their whiteness. And then think about the ways that we might get them to realize that being more attached to their whiteness didn't do them any good. Instead of saying, well, they're just these damn racists, so we just got to do whatever. Now, it doesn't mean there aren't horrible racists whom all of us want to reject in various ways, but it means that actually you're never going to get anywhere by basically treating the entire white working class as if you can write them off because of their racism. And that's kind of obvious, really.
Yeah.
It's not transcontextually, just in our current context. It's completely obvious that actually dividing the world into the racists and the anti-racists has not been good for left politics since look around us.
Right. Yeah. I got like 3 really short anecdotes and a declaration about this question, right? One of the anecdotes comes out of my teaching for the last 7 or 8 years I was teaching. And it speaks precisely to Walter's question or point about the quest for moral superiority. Because no matter what course I was teaching, I'd find a way to make it fit urban politics, whatever. I would always find a way to bring up the fights over Chinese exclusion in California in the last quarter of the 19th century. Because, most of the kids at Penn would have heard something about it, maybe right somewhere. But I laid it out to them this way. All right, so Stanford and the other barons, right? The rail barons and the agricultural barons announced publicly, right, that they intended to import Chinese workers to displace what were then called the Native American workers. What a difference time makes and how these names get assigned. Because for racial reasons, the Chinese could live for less and were more tractable and docile. Unsurprisingly, the reaction from the Native American workers was to fight for Chinese exclusion, right? And to argue that because of the racial characteristics that made them attractive to the employers, they were fundamentally unassimilable, right? So since Andrew Saxton, right, this story has been told, but it's been told in a way that lets Stanford and robber barons off the hook, right? Because they're the ones who established the terms of the argument. And it's the white workers, right, for whom it's not even clear how salient white was as an understanding of who they were prior to this conflict. You know what I mean? And that's kind of a hint at the declaration that's coming at the end of this. So I asked students, I said, okay, so if you were one of these Native American workers in 1870 and had this issue confront you, what would your position be? All right. So that's anecdote, number one. Anecdote number two was a few years ago, I was on a panel at the Southern Historical Association, and part of my talk, I made a reference to the defeated populism at the end of the 19th century. And when the panel was over, and I was pretty clear about the violence and all that. When the panel was over, a woman comes up to me, who I assume was some sort of historian, and says to me, "Well, but you know that the populist uprising was defeated because white workers were more committed to their whiteness than to the populist agenda." And I said to her, "Well, yeah, there was that, and there was also suppression and violence and murder and ballot theft and a couple of other items in a litany." To which she said, "Yeah, well, there was that too, but it's really like their commitment to white supremacy." Okay. And the third anecdote is kind of related more to the second one. Down here in South Louisiana, there was a concerted effort to import workers from the extreme northeast coast of Africa, that is Sicily, at the end of the 19th century, to work in the cane fields principally, where it was understood that they were more tractable and could outcompete blacks. And as had been the case with the Delta Chinese up in the Mississippi Delta region, a little farther north, in 1860s and 1870s, in the first generation, the new migrants lived among, worked with, cohabited with, partnered and/or reproduced with the blacks who were there already, which only makes sense because they were all there in the same slice of the society, right? The social structure. Well, after you've been here for a little while and start to figure out the stakes of being white, or at least not black, in late 19th century, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Arkansas, then understandably, you're going to do whatever you can to avoid being classified as black, right? And actually, the first test of Plessy versus Ferguson as applied to education was Gong Lum v. Rice, which was a Mississippi case, 1927, I think, in which the descendant of one of the Delta Chinese immigrants sued to permit his daughter to go to the white school in Jackson, Mississippi, and made arguments drawing on the race science of the day, that Chinese were, for both cultural and craniometric reasons, between blacks and whites, but they were closer to whites than they were to blacks. Gong Lum lost the case, but he so thoroughly persuaded the Jackson City fathers that they let his daughter go to the white school on a down low. But the point, so the point is that this shit is not a matter so much of being committed to whiteness, but here comes the declaration, which is that there was no whiteness to be committed to, right, really, till the end of the 19th century. And it got shaped through contestation between then and 1924 and the New Deal, right? And for people who are interested in critical examination of the whole whiteness thing and its debates, there's I don't know the number off the top of my head, but there's a special issue of ILWICH, the International Labor and Working Class History Journal. I think around 2002, maybe, I'm not sure. It's called Whiteness and the Historian's Imagination, which is a series of critical reflections on and examinations of the limits of the category of whiteness for making sense out of American history. And one of them, fundamentally, is that it's a transhistoric category. Whiteness is whiteness. It doesn't vary in time and place. The meanings never change. and it's moreover, kind of the like the doppelganger of the blackness, in the sense that people pursue it, you can't find it, you try to get there, but it's always beyond reach. So yeah, bullshit. That's a word I was saying.
If you like this video from The Jacobin Show, please hit like and subscribe. You can also watch the full episode and catch our future live streams by clicking the join button below and becoming a Jacobin YouTube member. Thanks.